Alright, so we're going to talk about some ideas, and this is one of those videos that I would really like to make long. I would actually try to spend as much time as possible on this because this sort of idea means and implies a branch of other ideas, and one of the things that I find unsatisfactory when I look back at my own videos is, man, I didn't expand enough on this topic and this topic. And one of the main reasons I would actually cut it short is because I know people's time is valuable. I know that if you're going to spend 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 45 minutes watching a video, that it has to have some sort of value. You can't be like, you know, with your trigger finger on the stop button or the X, you know, those kinds of videos. Within the first 5 minutes or so, you're like, you know, what am I even watching this for? I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting away just watching this guy talk. So, with that being said, I want to entertain the idea that politics doesn't work. And that's what I'm going to start with. That's going to be my premise here. Politics doesn't work. Now, the relationship that politics has with government is very important in this idea that it doesn't work, because behind politicians you have this monopoly of force. You have these institutions that use force and coercion to get things done rather than reason and evidence and things that actually work in, say, for example, economics and the free market system. And then you have politicians who are obviously related to the law, and they're related to the monetary policies that we have. And so, you know, let's just take this whole idea of government as the monopoly and use of coercion and force, politics as a body of representatives that sort of acts as a fog or a veil between government and people. And the people structure is sort of the entrepreneurship, economic industries, and then the people sort of fall under that. And this is the way I sort of see things, without introducing the wealthy families that have influenced major government trends and invading other countries. I won't even go there with this one. So I just want to keep it, you know, basic. And so we have these different sectors. Now, the people, to me, are what a lot of people refer to as the plebeians or the commons, in the sense that these are the people that go throughout their everyday lives trying to feed their families, just engaging in basic relationships and activities that really have nothing to do with the, you know, the higher things. Now, they do have something to do in terms that the people or the commons are highly affected by everything that happens above them. Everything from the economic, entrepreneurial sector up to political, institutional, you know, even highly academic, excuse me, don't know how to talk, government and so forth. So, why do I say that politics doesn't work? Well, I would steal the idea from Stefan Molyneux that ever since the libertarian movement started, I think he would say back in the 70s, that government has gotten big as it's ever been in the history of man? I don't know, at least in the last 100 years, right? And so that is because libertarian is supposed to be the minarchist or anarchist, in a sense, you know, minimum government sort of organization. But what do we have now? We have a government that's increasing in power, increasing in size, increasing in tyranny and perpetuity, and so on and so forth. And what I think is what actually works is what we can demonstrate to work. So, all right, politics. Phone would go off now. I'm not going to get that though. Politics. So a politician would come up and say, okay, if we can change this policy and we can give these kinds of speeches and affect these people, we're going to get change done, right? But regulation has consistently been a deterrent of free cooperation, of coherent cooperation. Every time, even as a child, I mean, think about this. Every time somebody puts a rule down, many children, if not most children, are saying, because that's a rule, you know I'm going to have to break it, right? I mean, that's almost a drive of humanity, that whenever limits are imposed, we have to go beyond them, go above them, and break them. That's the only way progress ever gets done, breaking the rules. I mean, this to me is simple logic, but somehow it's not simple. And so, this idea that politicians are symbolic of changes in policy, somehow they represent the voice of the people, and they speak for the people, although the people is not a defined thing. Now, that is a very important key to this, is the people are not defined. Who are the people? Are we talking about, are we talking about somebody, for example, living at the expense of the taxpayers, depending on government programs which give no education or insight into the manner of creating new ideas, creating things, and it has everything to do with complacency. It has everything to do with following the rules. If you are under a government rule, then you are under what the rules are that the government decides, whatever policies they implement. But let's see, can I sustain a thought without what actually works? I mean, what sort of things actually work to get a group of people to work together and actually do something smart for the good of the whole, rather than, maybe the good of the individual, or one person trying to get power over others and tell other people what to do? So how do we attain a balanced perspective? And the sort of thing that comes to mind, just as sort of like a thought experiment, but something that I actually am attempting to engage in, is creating relationships with things that are also going to create relationships with each other. So what do I mean by that? Here's an idea. I talked briefly about this thing called the insurance program that I'm currently working on, and this idea is to bring people closer to their food, their resources, and the actual labor, integrity, and intelligence that it takes to create and sustain just even a small governing body, even a group of like 10 people, say. What does it take to grow your own food, know how to produce it, know how to care for it? What does it take to care for your own relationships? We have to care for each other, because you maybe work on water and work on construction, and I work on food and cooking and maybe some other counseling arts or mentorship things, that sort of thing. And so when our life depends on it, it creates all the differences between us dissolve. When there is an immediate, and when we come together and say, the only way that we're going to get this is if we grow our own food, or in the case of piracy, the only way we're going to get this is if you and I work together to steal those resources, that's the only way it's going to get done. So this tangent just sprung right up, and it's begging to come out. But so that's what I think actually gets things done, when there is some sort of common goal and common ground that we can integrate, at least, or if not temporarily, and not this political will, not the changing of policies, The only thing that is relevant with the changing of policies is whether or not a person is going to show up at my door with a gun or send me some sort of nasty bill that I have to pay based on regulations. So I wouldn't even say implement policy so much as I would say is dissolve a lot of policies that just do nothing but prevent things. It's like here's a good example. Right now, when things are really difficult, instead of lowering the policies standards so that more black market stuff can happen because, you know, you and I as neighbors have trouble finding and gaining resources through, you know, like corporate and all this paperwork and stuff, that it's much easier for us to just trade and do things casually because things are so tough right now. So instead of the logic or the common sense, if you want to put it, to diminish regulation, government is increasing it and doing even more tyrannical stuff. So, I mean, there's just this obviously opposite force here of what actually works versus what we think is going to work based on faulty assumptions. And let me just say, as far as like politics are concerned, you really create nothing. If I were, you know, to say I was a politician, I don't have anything to do with going into a community and seeing the actual infestation of ignorance and actually seeing and feeling and getting my teeth and my hands dirty with the sort of things that hurt communities and prevent prosperity and perpetuate ignorance and crime and poverty. So I'm sort of distanced from those things to going up to policy and talking about all of these concepts that are only based in reality, based on consensus. So this is sort of like a side spin-off. So when I'm watching videos on YouTube sometimes of people high up in power that go to certain colleges and stuff, and they speak at maybe Edinburgh or the Kennedy School, where is that at? Harvard's Kennedy School of Politics or something like that. And I listen to these guys debate and everything, and then they get questions, and the students get to ask questions. And I mean, these students are so smart, man. They're on the ball. They construct these arguments and say, okay, I hear what you're saying as a politician, but what about the actual damages that are done in these countries, you know, because of conflict of interest and sort of things, you know? And they're right. They're absolutely right. Now, this problem is that these political interviewees are so good at manipulating words and arguments and providing partial data, just overwhelming amounts of it, that I mean, the students don't get to follow up. It's not a follow-up debate where the students get to prowl and constantly question. It's just you would just think of it as the common teacher-student, where the student asks a question, but the teacher, because of his tenure, professorship, and all this, becomes the authority and doesn't allow the influence of the student, what the student's actual intentions, like what they're actually trying to get out, it doesn't filter in. It doesn't go through. And so and so I don't know where I was going with that. Well, I mean, I guess I'll just go back to the basis of the argument, is to say that politics just doesn't work, right? I mean, even a politician giving the best speech requires that the people have the sort of response that is necessary to move things forward. Somebody giving just the best motivational speech in the world needs the ears of a group of people, not the people, because as we said, it's not statically defined. It's not a static thing. It's a movement, and the people changes. And so someone giving just an absolute motivational speech the people have to sort of get that fire and that desire to say, I'm going to take control now. I'm going to take control of my own life, and I'm not going to keep putting it out and putting it off to some arbitrary institutions that have no idea what my life is like. They have no idea the hardships that I'm living on a day-to-day basis. They have no idea what it actually takes. They just talk, and they talk about things in a form that has no way to reach me. So, with that being said, how do we create a system that gets people to feel empowered about their own lives? How do we create programs and get people to take interest in their own lives, in their own health and their own well-being, and want to change, want to understand what change is, how it's going to come about, how we're going to move forward? And these are just concepts, but what that means for that person, what that means for those individuals, you know, based on their own environment. I mean, a community may have a very specific problem of health that they can't get because of government regulations and stuff that they can't get implemented. I'm trying to think of a very specific example here. So I have to sort of make one up in the sense that, let's say a community has have a lot of trouble with getting clean water. And the reason they have a lot of trouble with getting clean water is because there's a government regulation that says these water pipes have to go through this particular segment of the earth. And, you know, we brought scientists in, and the scientists discovered that that particular part of the earth that the pipes are going through is contaminated. It's infested with carcinogens, and it gets filtered through the water, and so by the time it gets to these people, it's nasty, and obviously it has health issues. But because of government regulation, which is obviously associated with corporate interests, I mean, come on, let's not be naive here, that because of these regulations, it's almost impossible without breaking government rule to get clean water to people. And we sort of have to figure out how are we going to solve these problems around government. And that always is the problem. We always have to say, man, we got these great ideas, we know how to solve the problems, but what we meet is government. It's like we can't do it. We can't have this free and great and compassionate and empathetic and just practical means of changing things for this group of people because we got these regulations based on corporate interests. Now, as I stated in a previous video, we have to, we have to it's no longer about tiptoeing and finding a way to do it around government. Now it's about getting people to understand what government means in their minds and in association with their way of life. That as long as they put this body of people this idea of government as their supreme authority, things will just always be under, you know, this rule, this bar, this glass house, if you want to say. We'll just always be putting ourselves in the limits of this oppressive use of force, right? So only by coming into your own, figuring out who you are, knowing who you are, being confident in that, and having this common idea with other people that relate to your actual life values, do things get done. This is the way I see it. I mean, I would love for everyone and anyone to sort of readjust this argument and bring forth different evidence and things and what history says and what other data shows. I would love to be proved wrong if that's the case, because I'm not so stuck in my ways that I think that I'm absolutely right. This is not about being right. This is just, like I said, an entertainment of ideas to really see where this goes, and whether it has pertinence to your life or not, I'm not sure. I mean, I assume all but 2 people will view this, so it may just be you and I. It may even just be me and this camera lens right here. So on that note, alright, so where are we? We're at 20 minutes. This thing could still go. This thing could still go. So I think that, no, I don't want to take that one. Let's see, what can we go to from here? A lot of silence. Maybe I will just end it here. We talked about politics not working. Well, oh, okay, well, this really almost has nothing to do with what I originally started with, but in a sense it does, and I might just sort of use this as like a segue into another video. I'm just gonna, it's like the, you know, at the end of the movie and after the credits you sort of see like this, the preview of what's gonna be part 2. So I was thinking about this morning. I was thinking about that mostly we're run by our unconscious impulses, right? The power of the substructures of our brain, the primary evolutionary parts, are much more potent initially than the latter parts. And so this has to do with nonverbal cues. So we can say that, you know, generously speaking, 80-90% is unconscious. And that same percent, it goes into, therefore, nonverbal cues. So what I want to bridge here is the place of language and the use of symbols to sort of demonstrate meaning and intention, right? And I mean, this is such a profound subject. So I might even just end it here and start up a new video so I can do back to back. I think that's what I'll do. So we'll end it here, and the next video is going to start with the unconscious nonverbal cues and its relevance to symbols and the use of language. Stay tuned.